If you think all those physical sensations you've been experiencing are because you have anxiety, then you need to stick around, because in the next few minutes I'm going to explain to you why you don't have anxiety and what you're actually going through is something entirely different. Welcome back to the channel. Now, I know right now it might feel like you have anxiety. You might well be experiencing what you regard to be the symptoms of anxiety, and you might even have been told that you unfortunately have an anxiety disorder. But that actually isn't true, or certainly not from my perspective as an anxiety therapist that's been working with clients for the last 15 years. And I'm going to break this down in two parts. First, I'm going to explain why the idea of having anxiety is misleading and is potentially guiding you in the wrong direction when it comes to solving any issues you have right now. And secondly, I'm going to explain what actually is going on when we feel those intense sensations and why the reality is a lot less scary than we've imagined. So let's start at the beginning. So I hear it all the time from clients, I see it in the comments section of my videos, I read it in forums. People say I have anxiety, like they're describing some physical condition, like they've caught a cold or been diagnosed with a disease. And every time I hear this, I can feel myself tensing up, because anxiety isn't something you have, it's something you do. Anxiety isn't an illness, it's an emotion. It's not a random happening, it's a direct action, a deliberate emotional strategy that a part of your mind is employing. Now, it might feel out of your control right now, but just because it's not a conscious choice doesn't mean there isn't a part of you actively doing it. And that distinction is really important because the language we use matters. In the same way that we don't say, I have fear or I have anger, we shouldn't suggest to ourselves that we have anxiety. These days we're very quick to pathologize and medicalize our emotional responses, but feeling an emotion intensely does not make it an illness or a condition that we somehow carry around with us like a permanent fixture of our identity. Now you might be wondering, what's the big deal? So what if I say I have anxiety? And what good is just changing my language around this going to actually do? Well, it's not just about changing the words, it's about improving your understanding. Because there's a couple of important reasons why seeing anxiety as some kind of condition you're afflicted with is stopping you from getting the other side of this. When you say, I have anxiety, you're framing anxiety as something outside of your control, like it's this thing that's happened to you, rather than something you're actively doing. It's almost as if anxiety becomes this rogue entity that strikes you regardless of what you do, but that's simply not the case. We feel anxious for a reason, even when it isn't immediately apparent what that reason is. When we stop treating anxiety like a condition we have and start treating it like an emotional response that we experience, we start to regain our power over it. And not because in some way this casts some magical healing spell, but because no matter what we're going through in life, we only ever have as much power as we perceive ourselves to have. If we can start to see anxiety for what it really is, a normal, temporary emotional response, then it stops feeling like an uncontrollable force. By telling yourself you have anxiety, you're subtly telling yourself that it's not something you can change. It's just an affliction that you have to, in some way, manage. But if you recognize it as something you do, you immediately put yourself back in the driver's seat. You regain your agency. So there's this thing called second fear, which could basically be described as the fear of the fear, or in this instance, when we feel anxious about how anxious we feel. It's that point where any anxiety we feel is less about life's challenges and more about how anxious we might be in the face of them. It comes with associated thoughts about how bad the anxiety might become in the future. What if I can't cope? What if I go mad? What if I die of panic? At some point, the anxiety about our own responses becomes our biggest issue. And here's the problem. Telling yourself or being told you have anxiety is the quickest way to create and fuel second fear. When you believe anxiety is something you have, it feels like something that can suddenly flare up or spiral out of control at any moment. You start dreading those moments when anxiety might strike. It creates what we might refer to as the anxiety loop. We recognize what we believe to be anxiety symptoms, maybe tightness in the chest, racing heart, increased breathing, and any number of other physical sensations. And because anxiety is now perceived to be the big bad, the condition we suffer with, we get increasingly anxious about what appears to be an anxiety attack occurring. This then causes our body to create more of the sensations, which just fuels further concern and increases anxiety. Almost all of the anxiety issues I see clients for boil down to the problem of second fear. And the simple phrase, "I have anxiety," is at the very heart of that problem. At this point, you might be thinking, but Tim, what if I've been diagnosed with an anxiety disorder? Surely then I actually have anxiety. So let's talk about our anxiety diagnosis. Weirdly enough, the idea, and more importantly, the fear that anxiety can get so bad that you reach the point where you can be diagnosed with a disorder is exactly the thinking that causes the problem in the first place. The idea that the emotion and the disorder are two separate things, two different categories. It's this concept of disordered anxiety as opposed to normal anxiety that just adds fuel to the anxiety fire as we start fearing the idea that we may at some point fall into this disordered bracket. That's when it starts to feel serious, maybe permanent, and even potentially life-altering. But here's what I want you to understand. Anxiety disorders aren't some genetic or biochemical issue that make your anxiety fundamentally different from normal anxiety or consign you to a lifelong struggle. The term anxiety disorder is just a way of describing how you currently think and feel. It's not something that's wrong with you, it's just where your emotional responses are right now. For disordered, read confused. Your mind is currently in a state of confusion that is resulting in your anxiety response becoming exaggerated and feeling inappropriately high for the circumstances. But when we do the work to get back in control of how our mind is reacting, then our responses will no longer fall into that category. And what I mean by getting back in control is clearing up that state of confusion. Namely the idea that there's something maladaptive and medically concerning about feeling highly anxious. And I know what you're thinking right now. Surely it's these extreme symptoms that tell me I do have anxiety. But this brings us on to the second major point I want to make in this video. Anxiety itself doesn't come with symptoms. And the reason I say this is not simply because symptoms imply illness, and if anxiety isn't an illness, then it can't have any symptoms. No, I'm talking about those intense sensations you've labeled as your anxiety symptoms. The stuff we listed earlier: tight chest, racing heart, shortness of breath, tremors, throat sensations, stomach sensations, paresthesia, disassociation. All of these and more, they are not signs of anxiety. Anxiety doesn't come with visceral sensations, but you know what does? Fear. Everything you've labelled as a malfunctioning anxiety response is actually a perfectly healthy and natural fear response. The moment you started to fear something in your life, you triggered the adrenaline and cortisol that your body provides to get you ready for life-saving action. And when the thing you fear most became anxiety itself, you started to fear an emotion that you're actually meant to experience every single day. Anxiety just tells you where to put your focus right now. It's only when the thing you're focusing on contains some perceived threat that fear joins the party. And that's when the physical sensations kick in. Not because you're broken, but because in the face of threat, that's what's appropriate. It's called the stress response, aka fight or flight. And it's what happens to healthy human beings when they feel in danger. Every sensation you experience and have labelled as part of your anxiety is either the direct result of going into fight or flight, or the impact on your body of being in fight or flight for a little longer than is ideal. Even if you think that the sensations are kicking in before you're even aware of any thought causing it, that's simply because you've inadvertently trained your subconscious to be on the lookout for any signs of anxiety and to treat that as dangerous. It's understanding that these physical sensations are healthy rather than unhealthy that helps us to start to respond differently. So what's going to be the takeaway here? Well, it's simple. Correct your language, but most importantly, correct your thinking. Stop thinking of anxiety as something you have. Stop framing it as a condition that's out of your control or a disorder that means you are damaged or broken. Anxiety is a normal human emotion, and the more we can start treating it that way, the less power it has over us. And if what was locking you into that idea that you have anxiety was all those physical sensations, the perceived symptoms, then the next time you feel them, remind yourself this is a very healthy response. It's my body doing what my mind is currently asking of it. As soon as we start to treat those physical sensations as something other than an indicator of illness, it's surprising how quickly they start to calm down and our body starts to recover. Simply because we've stopped constantly re-triggering those sensations with our fear. I really hope this video has been of help. Let me know in the comments if you found this one useful. Please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for more content like this, and most importantly, share this video so that others can get the help they need. And if you're finding my content of value, then why not join the membership area where you get access to extra videos and exclusive weekly members-only live streams. Thanks for watching. I'm Tim Box. Always remember, be kind to your mind, and I'll see you next time.